So before we dive in, I want to pose you two questions to consider. Number one, how well do you know your own mind? Number two, how well do you want to know your own mind? In this video, I'll go over the most important lessons I've learned from psilocybin, aka magic mushrooms, and as a bonus, if you stick around till the end, I'll reveal to you the secret to making all of your dreams a waking reality. And before we get started, let me just make it clear that I'm not condoning the usage of these substances, but if you are going to use plant medicine, please use it responsibly. With that being said, here are the four most important lessons I've learned from my journey with psilocybin and self-discovery. Lesson number one, reality is subjective, right? Your mind creates your ultimate reality and you can control it. You might be thinking, what the heck is he talking about? What I mean by that is the way that you see reality is different than the way I see reality, is different than the way that someone else sees reality, right? No two people on this planet sees the world in the exact same way because each of us have different lived experiences. And on the surface, this is pretty obvious, right? But this is deep implications. Our thoughts and beliefs literally shape our reality. As an example, someone who sees themselves as a victim will think the world is out to get them and will in turn see every setback, hardship, challenge as proof that the world is indeed out to get them. Whereas someone who has a belief that life happens for a reason, whether good or bad, will always find a silver lining, and from the outside, they'll seem to have an ability to flow through life. And when we look at successful individuals, and you can define success however you want, the people we admire the most and want to emulate in one way or another, the reality that they live and create is very different compared to both yours and mine. And a great example of someone who's created his own reality against all odds is David Goggins, right? Now, whether you care for him or not, it's hard to deny he's achieved a level of success and greatness that many aspire to. And just to give you a quick rundown of his story, he went from being, physically abused, mentally abused by his father, faced racism as a kid, right? He weighed over 300 pounds at one point in his life, and he didn't know how to read or write. And he ultimately became a Navy SEAL, a world-class public speaker, a best-selling author, and ultra-marathon runner. So for someone like that who has had all the cards stacked against him and faced those extremely difficult life challenges throughout his life, right, and to emerge on the other side being known for what he does is a great example of how our minds can create your own reality. Your thoughts and the way that you see the world are ultimately the drivers of the way that you work through the world. And the beautiful part of this is that we can get to choose how we think and navigate through it. We get to choose how we talk to ourselves. And we get to choose how we deal with adversity. And the quality of your life will reflect the way that you choose to view the world. The truth is, most people go through the world feeling like they're powerless and victims of fate and victims of life. But the reality is, if there's something that you don't like about either yourself or the world, you get to choose to actually change it. And I want you to consider for a moment just how powerful that is. The caveat here is this requires a level of self-reflection that most people are not ready for, right? To look into the mirror, face your demons, and befriend them, which leads to my next lesson that I learned, which is number two, the unconscious mind is real and powerful. In order to unlock your highest potential, you must acknowledge and integrate your own shadow. There's this part of ourselves that most people don't know about, and it lives within our unconscious mind, right? It's called our shadow. Not the shadow that you see behind you when there's a light shining in front of you, right? But the shadow that you don't see, the shadow that lives in your unconscious mind. This shadow is a part of your unconscious psyche and contains with it everything that society, parents, primary caregivers, school has conditioned out of us. So within our shadow contains the feelings, emotions, traits that we fear and suppress the most. These are the traits that we don't want others to see, such as our traumas, insecurities, aggressions, vulnerabilities, our natural drive for sexuality, unacceptable desires, negative emotions, and even unacknowledged talents. It's the part of yourself that exists only in your subconscious or unconscious mind until you do the work to bring it into consciousness. And it's a part of ourselves that we repress and hide away and pretend that it doesn't exist. Guess what, guys? It's there. And what happens in doing so is that we unconsciously project our own shadow, those undesirable traits and feelings, onto other people. So if you've ever done something out of alignment with the way that you see yourself, your own self-image, and have regretted it, chances are that was your shadow actually acting out. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist who introduced the concept of the shadow, and who was way ahead of his time, had this to say: a man who is always possessed by his shadow is always standing in his own light and falling into his own traps, living below his own level. And a great example of this in action is the classic tale of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde in classic literature. Okay, so the story follows Dr. Henry Jekyll, a well-respected scientist who conducts experiments to separate the good and evil aspects of his personality. And through a potion, he transforms into Mr. Edward Hyde, a malevolent, violent alter ego. And Hyde represents the dark and repressed side of Jekyll's psyche, symbolizing the shadow. And as the narrative unfolds, Jekyll loses control over the transformation and Hyde becomes increasingly dominant. The struggle between Jekyll and Hyde represent the internal conflicts between the socially acceptable parts of the self and the darker aspects of the psyche, which are surfaced. And here's the crazy thing, right? Not only does this happen on a person level, right, within each one of us, but on a collective level of society as well, unconsciously operating under the radar. Our collective shadow projection is the reason that we have war, genocide, violence, racism, political polarization, and all the ugly aspects of society. Think about the shadow as a hidden aspect of yourself that you're not aware of, but holds a hidden power over you. The unacknowledged shadow is the root of life dissatisfaction and self-sabotage. And it's your life's work to recognize these patterns in order to change them. Facing your own shadow is a continuous process of acknowledgement, integration, and will be the most important and the most challenging and also the most rewarding thing that you can do in your lifetime. So how do you actually do it? It boils down to non-judgmental self-reflection, realization, and acceptance. First and foremost, one must acknowledge the existence of a shadow, right? Then the work begins to understand and accept, and then eventually to integrate his or her own shadow. And what I like about plant medicine, like psilocybin so much, is that it allows you to look deeply inward to a degree that would be normally hard to do. But there are so many other ways to do this type of work as well. Therapy is a great tool to do this without using a psychedelic substance, right? A good therapist acts as a mirror into your own self. And, they ask questions that give you a chance to find those answers that are already within yourself. And usually it's the most uncomfortable feelings, right? The ones that we're running away from that lead to the biggest breakthroughs. So don't be afraid to face your fears. Journaling is also a great practice, right? There's something about writing, bringing pen to paper that really brings the unconscious forward. So you can do a little bit of free association, write down anything that comes to mind, any thoughts, without any sort of judgment, and you might be surprised about what sort of thoughts, come into your mind when you read back on your entries. Dream analysis and active imagination are also super, super helpful, right? Contrary to popular belief that dreams have little to no meaning, dreams are one of the most important ways to better understand yourself, right? Dreams are actually a portal to your unconscious mind. The unconscious operates not in words or languages, but in symbols, okay? The art of dream analysis is the art of understanding your own psyche. And along the same vein, active imagination is akin to entering the dream state while you're awake. And these are two topics that are huge and would be separate videos entirely. But a great place to start is the book Inner Work, Using Dreams and Active Imagination for Personal Growth by Robert A. Johnson. One last technique that I like to use is the mirror reflection technique. This one is a little bit more advanced and can be pretty challenging. And all you need to do is stare at yourself in the mirror, right? Could be a few minutes, could be 5, could be 10. Just observe what thoughts come up about yourself. Mirrors don't just reveal our physical appearance. They are symbolic of spiritual and psychological depth. They can reveal who we are on a deeper level and have the power to deeply disclose who we truly are. And remember, the underpinning of all these reflection tools is non-judgment and self-acceptance. Self-exploration can be challenging as it is, so give yourself grace, right? Don't be too hard on yourself, and also be patient, right? You might have a huge breakthrough one day and not have another one for weeks, months, or even years. Remember to be kind. Remember to be compassionate to yourself, because integrating the shadow is a lifelong journey of self-discovery and personal growth. Okay, lesson number 3. We project aspects of ourselves onto others. In psychology, the term projection refers to a defense mechanism where individuals attribute their own thoughts, their own feelings, and motives to others. This process involves projecting our own unconscious desires, emotions, or traits onto somebody else. And it's a way for us to cope with internal feelings or uncomfortable emotions by externalizing them. The need to judge others arises from the inability to recognize those same qualities within oneself. Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. This is a great quote by Jung. So for example, if someone is angry at themselves but is unable to acknowledge or accept that emotion within themselves, they might project that anger onto another person, right? And believe that that other person is the one who is angry at them. And this projection, right? This defense mechanism operates at an unconscious level, right? It helps individuals avoid facing aspects of themselves that they find difficult or unacceptable. Another example is if you find yourself judging others for being narcissistic, right? That means you reject the idea that you yourself can have traits of narcissism, right? And the reality is narcissism is a personality trait that every person possesses to some degree, right? And to reject that in yourself means to project that onto others. Same for someone who judges those with a different sexual orientation. Unconsciously, they are deeply insecure about their own sexuality. And I'll give you another example, this time from my personal life. For those of you who unfortunately know Andrew Tate, right? I used to not be able to stand Andrew Tate. Couldn't stand him, right? Still in some aspects, still can't stand him. I thought he was arrogant. I thought he was selfish. I thought he was a rude asshole. But then I thought to myself, hey, I can be arrogant sometimes. I can also be selfish sometimes. And sometimes I'm an asshole. And growing up, I identified as being a nice guy. So how could I be nice and an asshole at the same time? So I pushed those negative qualities in myself away. And I realized, whoa, like I was projecting these qualities in myself that I refused to acknowledge onto a guy that I've never met. Doesn't mean that I agree with what he says, but it opened my eyes to the idea that people and life events serve as mirrors, reflecting our own internal thoughts, our beliefs, and our feelings. We judge others on the aspects of ourselves which we cannot tolerate. So if there's something that you don't like about someone, it usually means there's a part of yourself in them that you see that you refuse to identify and accept. So how can we use this insight to better understand ourselves? Now, I'm not going to tell you this is the easiest thing to do. In fact, facing oneself is one of the hardest things that you'll ever do in your whole life, but it will be one of the most rewarding things as well. Notice who you judge. Notice what aspects of others you don't like. And really ask yourself, why? How does judging others reflect on me? And what can I learn from this to reduce the judgment both on myself and on others? And ultimately, you'll know when you're on the right path, when you can recognize those aspects that you dislike in others and acknowledge that they live inside of you as well. And a really funny thing happens when you understand yourself better. You become less judgmental towards others, because when you understand yourself, the need to judge others go away. You literally withdraw your judgments. And here's the interesting thing as well. The positive characteristics that you see in others reflects an aspect of yourself as well. So everything that you admire in another person is a reflection of some aspect of your own inner world. Same thing goes for what you dislike. To be able to perceive a certain quality in another person, that quality must be part of your own consciousness. You could not see it otherwise. And I'll leave you this quote from Charles Horton Cooley, former president of the American Sociological Association. I am not who you think I am. I am not who I think I am. I am who I think you think I am. Lesson number 4, how to find and become your authentic self. So it took me 25 years to learn this, right? Self-acceptance and compassion is key to living an authentic life. In order for us to find and become the person we were meant to be, we must live inwards. And the greatest and most rewarding relationship that you can ever have in this life is the one with yourself. And when you truly love yourself, you'll find that all of your external relationships transform to reflect the love that you have for yourself. Only when you really love yourself are you free to truly love others. And by free, I mean free of insecurity, free of attachment, free of fear. And it all starts with self-acceptance and self-compassion. Truly, there is no greater mental shift that you can achieve in your relationships than to realize that everyone is your mirror. And when you do, you will know that there's no one to change for you. One of the things that Jung introduced was the notion of archetypes. And basically what archetypes are universal inborn models of people, behaviors, personalities that play a role in influencing human behavior. You can see them through countless myths through human history, and I'll be making a video in the future talking all about it. And one of the archetypes that Jung introduced is the concept of the self, right? Big self, big S. Self with a capital S is our higher self, our true self that we are not able to witness clearly due to the many layers of societal conditioning and due to our own ego that refuses to see below the surface. But this is where authentic self lives, waiting to be discovered. And according to Jung, the self signifies a unification of the conscious mind and the unconscious mind in a person, representing the psyche as a whole. It is realized in the product of individuation, which, by his definition, is the process of integrating various aspects of one's personality and becoming truly human. The key to individuation and finding your true authentic self is deep inner work and acknowledging and integrating the unconscious mind. And you can really think of this as your own hero's journey, right? Because everyone is the hero of the story in their own lives. Everyone has a story so unique that each must find, fight, and conquer their own demons in order to become the person they were truly meant to be. And you might have recognized a theme throughout this video, which is self-reflection, right? Specifically, non-judgmental self-reflection and questioning, right? Questioning the mind in order to truly understand ourselves. The most difficult thing in life is to know yourself. And lastly, we've come to the secret of life. Here's the secret. You ready for it? If you want to create the life of your dreams and live up to your highest potential, you must be willing to understand yourself and befriend your mind. Let me repeat that. If you want to create the life of your dreams and then live up to your highest potential, you must be willing to understand and befriend your mind. If you want your wildest dreams to come true, you must become a champion of yourself and of your mind. You must take on the journey of individualization, of merging your two minds, conscious and unconscious. Only then can you step into your most authentic, truest self. True self-mastery comes from diving deeply into your psyche and reflecting. It means to question your beliefs, to examine your traumas and to accept your insecurities, and to be willing to let your old identity die so that your new one can rise from its ashes. We only have 2 lives. The second one begins when we realize we only have one. Do me a favor, guys. In the comments below, write in what you'd like to learn about your own nature of mind and what topics you'd like to see me cover. If you've had similar realizations or insights, I'd love to hear your story and how that shaped you to becoming the person that you are today.